I mean, I've worked in juvenile detention and foster care and pediatric trauma centers. I've been a therapist in the Oakland Public Schools. I've seen a lot of human suffering.
Yeah.
But when people ask me what I'm hopeful about, I say almost exactly what you just said.
Mm-hmm.
There is a social movement emerging among young people that says, nah, what you're telling me ain't true.
Yeah.
Welcome to Season 2 of the Road to Ambition podcast, where we're exploring factors that empower teens to thrive. Today, Ambition Angels CEO Remi is joined by Alex Briscoe, principal of the California Children's Trust. Drawing from over 25 years in youth services and public health, Alex offers critical insights into the unique challenges faced by Black and Brown youth in today's mental health landscape. Let's get into it.
All right, Alex, thank you again for hopping on with me. I reflect back to when we first met, and I hopped on a call. I was at my office, and it's on Zoom, and I get connected to so many different people who somebody says, "Oh, you have to meet blank," and so you were one of those folks. And we were super early on this journey to like building ambition, and we hopped on the call, and I remember specific elements of it and what I learned in that call, but I really remember how I felt afterwards. It was such a confidence booster for me. Like I just felt like I was like, oh, shoot, I'm more excited. And I love calls like that because it means I connected with somebody who saw the same issue and saw what we're trying to do as a role in it. And that just always pushes us forward. And so, your ability to kind of articulate the issues in this fight for teens to be mentally well, and the vision you had in terms of where ambition can kind of play a role, really helped at that moment. And so I just want to start by saying thank you, for your insight and for just breathing confidence into such a young idea.
Man, thank you for those words, Remi. Yeah. I mean, what I would say, maybe just quickly, just to repeat, to distill that conversation, is we ain't going to treat away racism and poverty in 50-minute psychotherapy sessions. Like that's just the solution to the youth mental health crisis has very little to do with the traditional medical model mental health system. And I remember thinking, man, I talked to a lot of folks who are using technology, but very few who have spent their life and career working directly with kids. So I was pretty psyched, I remember it was a pretty uncommon conversation that was very connected to the lived experience of young people. I remember it too, man. Thanks for the work you do.
That's awesome. Appreciate it. All right. So before we get into like the work you do and the insight you bring based on your kind of experience living in this space and working in this space, I'm a youth developer. So that means anytime I talk to a kid, I'm like imagining them as a 35-year-old. Like and I imagine them thriving in every area. So so it pumps me up. I love seeing kids. I'm like, you're going to and so what little role can I play right now? Like that's the youth developer in me. It also means when I talk to adults, I imagine them as kids. And I'm curious, like, what were you like? What did you get? What did you not get? And so that kind of frames the way that I look at the world. And so as we kind of get to know you and the audience, the folks listening, get to know you, I want you to kind of take us back to Alex Briscoe, the 15-year-old. Alex Briscoe, the 15-year-old, walk us through a little bit what you were like, what was happening that helped shape who you are today.
Love that question. I also love the idea of treating young people as they might become. Like that invitation is a beautiful thought, Remi. I had a bunch of troubles in school. I went to a bunch of different schools. Humorously, I would say schools weren't really set up for me that good. And when I was 15, I landed at a Quaker boarding school. And at the time, it felt like prison. But looking back on it, man, it was like a lifesaver. And not only was the school community pretty thoughtful and compassionate, I played a lot of sports. And I got very early kind of politicized by the black and brown kids were on the sports teams with me at a pretty fancy kind of prep schools type community. But not just poor kids. Like Ennis Cosby, Bill Cosby's son, Nasheet Waits, the drummer's son, who's a drummer himself and a beautiful, amazing musician, were, on my high school basketball team. And, amazing other young people who came from less privileged backgrounds, but kids of color. So I remember kind of an affinity and also a sense of like, hey, it's different from my friends. So I just want to name that. It was true in college too. When I was 15, I was newly at this boarding school and trying to feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Trying to find connection.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's
how did that story. So it's like you saw early that there's something happening racially, not just socioeconomically. And so you were thinking kind of at that level, or were you just thinking relationally at that point? These are my friends and I don't like that. And then that turned into, because did that kind of plant a seed early and then you stayed on that course pretty much up until now?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to overblow my racial consciousness at 15. Okay, so
right.
But I came from a family where there were social justice issues. As my dad was early in the Peace Corps and did public service. My mom was an academic. I was dealing with some tragedy. My mom was dying of cancer when I was 15, and like I said, I'd had some sort of troubles and travails in the various school communities that I'd been to. But yeah, I think I knew early on that shit wasn't right. And it was less right for people who didn't look like me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So as you go to college, you carry this on, and oftentimes what happens in college is these things that were planted in us early start to form a little bit, and you're playing around with it, and and then you start to feel a passion and you start to work at it. My wife says you never know how deep a problem is until you try to solve it, and I'm sure you've experienced that over the last however many years you've been doing this. But tell me about that kind of journey and what you were kind of learning along the way as you were trying to do something about it.
Yeah, man. Well, I'll give you another basketball story because this is super politicized me. Like I was a freshman at Vassar College. So incredible privilege. And I was on a basketball team and we kind of sucked. We were getting blown out. I think we were 6-24 or something. But again, a lot of the young men, young African-American men, there weren't many on campus, were on the team.
Yep.
And the coach of the team was the coach of the local high school gymnastics team. And on our away games, there was always a young black woman who would come on to keep score and stuff. And we didn't know what was going on. We were at the last week of practice, the guy gets taken off the court in handcuffs. He had been abusing this young woman of color. Now,
gotcha.
Hold this one with me. Here we are, probably the highest concentration of young men of color on campus, and me and my friend, we're, and we realized what was going down in front of us. And to say that, without going into too many of the details of what actually planned and happened and all that, there was real violence in our minds. Because not only did we not like the guy, but we realized what had been happening in front of us, and we all felt shame.
Wow. Yep.
But the reason where I got extra, so first of all, that was politicizing in its own right.
Yep.
Right.
Yep. Yep.
Just anger, shame, all that.
Yeah.
At the same time, Bell Hooks came and gave a speech to the campus.
Oh, that'll do it.
Let me check this out, man. This is a fucking story.
Wow.
She, it was in the school chapel. And there had been an incident with Senator Moynihan. There was some drama, some political drama around, his words and language and approach. And there had been a student protest. But also right on the backs of this thing that had happened on the basketball team that the school swept under the rug. Okay. No, nothing. No one came and talked to us. No, nothing.
Wow.
Nothing.
Wow.
Okay?
Yep. Yep.
Bell Hooks gives this speech. But when she starts the speech, she's little, okay?
Yeah.
She picks up the podium and turns and sets it down, looking in this little like area where there's 3 benches where we are sitting.
Wow.
And delivers the entire, basically, 101 about racial justice in America.
Wow.
She delivers it to us. Like sitting in the side alcove.
Wow.
At the end of her, doesn't look back once, man. Nothing like there's 1,200 people behind me. She's talking
to you. Yes.
And then she picks up the podium and they plug back the mic and someone says from the audience, well, hey, what was that? Why'd you do that? And she turned and she said, still, like in her truth, I'm not here for you.
Ooh. Ooh. Yeah. That planted the seed right there.
Oh, man.
Water the seed, probably.
Yeah.
Wow.
And again, I don't want to overblow my own 18-year-old. I was trying to
Yeah.
No,
I get it. You were an 18-year-old.
I was like, there's no perfect boy thing here, but
sure.
Man, for what I've found about justice is you find people who have had a common experience, like music or sports or struggle or resistance. Yeah. And that's where you find love and connection.
That's beautiful.
You don't collaborate on collaboration. You collaborate on the execution of a task. And that's where you meet love and connection and justice. And I had a couple early tastes of it that really were formative for me.
That's so awesome. And so, I look at a situation like that, and I think that right there is a prime example of the importance of planting seeds of truth in young people, right? Like someone needs to be able to articulate it in a way that like these moments matter. Those conversations you have with a young person matters. That person who comes and speaks to a young person, it matters a lot. And so we should really look for those opportunities for the positives. But it also makes me think about students who didn't go to Vassar, weren't hearing bell hooks, and didn't get those. And so I'm curious, just in your own experience, are there things that you felt as you look back? And obviously, we don't have any regrets and it made us the people we are. I understand that. But is there something crucial that you felt you needed as a young person that you didn't get?
Yeah, I mean, I need to, of course, contextualize any response that I give in the incredible privilege that I was raised in.
Yeah.
I didn't get taught in real ways, in non-tokenistic ways. I didn't get taught how rigged it is. I didn't get taught the racialized construction of poverty.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't get. Mm-hmm. I didn't get that. I got the kind of soft left of. I got a little bit of noblesse oblige and not much of the beauty and wisdom of struggle that I've learned. And I think my trajectory is probably a lot like many.
Yep.
But I didn't get to see the reality of it. The kind of bone crushing and the constraint of hope and opportunity that happens when you are, young and poor. And I think that's part of what's happening in the world right now, Remi, is young people know in unique and new ways.
I was just about to say, man, this is a new age of information and communication and knowledge and connection that's happening by way of the internet. I know we like to, and especially in my work, we're talking about a lot of the negative impact that technology has on young people. Yes, true. And they have a consciousness and an understanding and almost a healthy mistrust at this point that allows for revolution and for progress as a nation that I think we're going to experience because of them in a way that we haven't before.
Oh, Remi, man, amen. I mean, I've worked in juvenile detention and foster care and pediatric trauma centers. You know, I've been a therapist in the Oakland Public Schools. I've seen a lot of human suffering.
Yeah. Yeah.
But when people ask me what I'm hopeful about, I say almost exactly what you just said.
Mm-hmm.
There is a social movement emerging among young people that says, nah, what you're telling me ain't true.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's for your needs, not mine.
Right.
And that's why there's people like you and me have always been interested, like the nexus of youth development and mental health support, right? Like we've always been thinking about that. And I think the place they meet is in resistance. Like when I look back at young people who have survived and thrived in the most difficult circumstances, man, and I've seen a lot of that.
Yeah.
Almost all of them are conscious.
Yeah.
They are civically engaged. They are, you know, we always talk about LGBTQ kids and like their different, you know, the rates of self-injury and mood and anxiety disorders. That's true. But also look at LGBTQ kids and their disproportionate representation in peer health education programs and civic engagement.
Yep.
Like
they understand it.
You flip that switch and you say, nah, man, nah. Like, I think that's actually an essential component of effective mental health services. Like,
boom. That was the biggest takeaway from our conversation. I asked you, I said, all right, given your area of expertise, what is the skill one would need to learn upstream from these crises that might prevent these crises? And you said purpose. Purpose, right? And so that's what you're saying. Like, no stronger purpose is resistance, is seeing something that's not just affecting you, but affecting the people around you and saying, I'm going to do something about this to make it better. That is like, those are the type of things that give you chills, you know, and give you a reason to wake up beyond just your personal pleasure and entertainment. Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I think like, and mental health is the wrong word, but like social and emotional wellness, it's an act of defiance in this culture.
Hello. All right. So you're, I love this. I think I have an understanding of Alex Briscoe, the 15-year-old, you know, to an extent. And I know you were an 18-year-old boy like the rest of us, you know, dealing with all that goes into that. But at the same time, it sounds like you saw something in your friend group. Then it was almost ratified by somebody speaking in a way that made it make sense and take it a level beyond just your own experience to like, oh, this is actually something happening. And at some point you were imbued with this spirit that you could do something about it, because obviously you did. And you've been now in the work. So how would you know, as we come into now, like what you're doing now, if you're meeting somebody for the first time and how would you explain what it is you do, what it is you're trying to accomplish?
Well, I sometimes joke I'm a recovered bureaucrat and a defunct therapist, a Medicaid geek.
Okay.
After working as a therapist in the Oakland Public Schools and a children's hospital and in juvenile detention and foster care, I went to work for a county, and eventually I led a very large health system, you know, with 7,000 people working in it, and hospitals and ambulances and homeless shelters and special education programs. So I have very much a frame of administering a safety net system in the East Bay of San Francisco, Alameda County. And when I was leading that system, I was always struck by how poorly it was designed. And I would often struggle with whose needs were being met or served. And the example I will give you is like, I have literally billed tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars of mental health services to Medicaid. And every single one of the kids I served, I had to give a diagnosis to in order for me to get paid. But I would say maybe 10 or 20% of those kids actually met diagnostic criteria. And the rest were just dealing with really heavy stuff that happened. And so I was thinking of like, man, we are pathologizing this experience to benefit a largely white professional class. I mean, let's just get right down to it. Like 70% of licensed clinicians are white. 80% of poor kids are kids of color. So anybody who's worked in the system will say something similar, man. This isn't like
Yeah.
Alex, right?
Right.
Like,
Right.
whose needs are being served? Why is it so messed up? And when I finally left public service after 12 years in 2017, I got asked by some very rich people what I wanted to do, and I was like, man, reimagine the way we support the social and emotional health of children. Like what we're doing, man, is some messed up stuff and may actually be hurting kids. And it's both insufficient and it's like imprisoned culturally and in a medical model. And I had an instinct just from talking to folks that something was going on with young people. So we did some data. We looked at some data about inpatient admission for self-injury, and we saw some horrific numbers. This is 2016, 2017. And we saw that twice as many kids were trying to hurt themselves. It's like crazy numbers.
Wow.
So that was born of this thing called the California Children's Trust. We're a 5-year initiative. We're 4 years in, 4.5. And we said we wanted to do a set of things to change the system. And they included remove diagnosis as a prerequisite for care. Check, that's done.
Love it.
We wanted to expand the provider class, meaning not everybody wants a psychotherapist or needs one.
Right.
So we added community health workers and doulas and peers and wellness coaches. Four new provider types.
Yep. Check.
We knew that schools were essential, so we created a new benefit where managed care plans have to pay for services delivered in schools.
Yep.
We knew that caregivers were essential, but they can't get mental health support when they take their babies to the doctor. So we created a benefit called the dyadic benefit. So that when mama or caregiver takes their baby to the well child visit, they can get support.
Yep.
And then we knew we had to spend a whole lot of money because it's a legitimate crisis. And so we raised about $10 billion.
Wow.
And that's
did you say mil or B or B with a B?
B with a billion. That's the California Youth Behavioral Health Initiative, the investments of CalAIM, the Community Schools Partnership Program together. That's 10 to 15 billion. And so we think those are the essential. When you change a system, you got to reimagine how you qualify, align it with adversity, not pathology. You got to change who does the work, reimagine the workforce, democratize delivery. You got to change the setting, which is schools and primary care. Not hospitals and doctor's offices. And you got to spend money because kids are worth it. And a lot of it comes back to Medicaid because Medicaid covers half of all kids.
My dad is from Nigeria, and so this concept of it takes a village to raise a child is not a cute saying to him. It really is how he grew up. And so to know that there are folks like you and your team and everybody you've worked with to make this happen, legitimately, like this isn't even legitimately, I feel proud of you and your team for the work you've done, and grateful because you're tackling issues that we didn't know were there, causing symptoms we see every day. You know what I mean? So there's a level of like, man, I'm glad that folks understand the way this thing works at a political level that can advocate for some of the things we're seeing and trying to solve for, on the ground. And that's why it really does take that village. So that's incredible.
Thanks, Remi.
That's incredible.
I think the wisdom of what we did is we said, hey, look, the crisis is real. It's not about pathology. We've built a toxic culture for children. We now must teach them how to survive it. And if you're not paying for it, you're playing with it. So like the analysis has to be critical. It has to include race and class. And then you have to change how you pay for things, or you won't change the behavior of the system. So like both a reimagining and a critique, and then very, very practical strategies about the flow of money.
So in your work, kind of even referencing that quote about you never know how deep a problem is until you try to solve it. I'm sure over the last 5 years, it has just been like eye-opening experience after eye-opening experience. I'm sure you had hypotheses and then you're playing it out and you're just like, whoa, and not necessarily in all of a negative way. Like you just learned so much over the last 5 years. And I want for people, our audience are folks who are invested in Black and brown youth thriving. So we're talking funders, we're talking youth developers, teachers, parents, anyone who cares, which to me should be anyone, but like very specific folks who it's heavy on their mind. And so I've been tapped into this crisis that's on our hands on a local level for the last 15 years. A lot of what you're saying, I've seen it up close and personal with people I've been in relationship with, families I've tried to support. Right. But what you're doing is not even just on a California scale. I'm sure you're tapped into the national mental well-being of our kids. And so I'm just curious if you can speak to some of the key trends that you've been seeing in your field, and you can take this any way you want, that have implications for Black and brown teens that we're focused on building for.
Yeah. Well, I'll start with a positive. Man, does our culture ever need something to heal around? Man, do we ever? Like, and I'm hopeful because I'm having conversations across the racial and political spectrum that are compassionate and connected. I think people really do care about kids.
Beautiful.
And so I think we're actually in a sort of a moment in our culture where we have a chance to put our shit aside and do something right. So that's hopeful. And there's actually some kind of policy architecture, the way Medicaid works, that makes it kind of easy to do some of this stuff. Like, it actually is conducive.
Nice.
But
okay,
I think we have to acknowledge the reality of, power and race in America, and that far too many people see this crisis in the context of the medical model and are resistant to the social construction of the crisis. Like, and this is where I really want to, highlight the work of Dr. Nadine Burke-Harris, who repopularized the ACEs study.
Yep.
It turns out that adversity is a great way to talk to white people about race.
Because everybody can understand adversity, right?
We have all cried in our pillow.
Yeah.
And, when I'm in Georgia working on their Medicaid strategy and I'm talking to Governor Kemp, I can't say equity. 400 years of structural inequality.
Right.
You can't get it that way.
Yeah.
But, they got kids.
Yeah.
He cares,
Yeah.
His emergency departments are also overwhelmed.
Yep.
No one is we ain't making it up,
no one's
man.
Safe. Yeah, that's right.
Lady Children's in San Diego went from 3 kids a day to 33 kids a day in psychiatric distress.
Wow.
It's really happening, man. Young people are telling us that this is impossible. That when we tell them that women can't be president, that Black kids aren't as good as white kids, that fame is merit, that wealth is value, when we send these messages, kids tell us what that means to them, which is despair. And frustration and sadness and recognition that this shit is rigged.
Wow.
And so none of us who knows this are really surprised that it's showing up this way, but it's clearly showing up and no one's arguing. So unfortunately, the solution tends to be kind of medical model-y. How can we get more therapists? How can we build more beds? And by the way, we need those too.
Yep. I was just going to say, those are critical. And
but if you try to solve a socially constructed epidemic of despair with meds and beds, you will fail. And you'll end up reinforcing what is a very troubling trend of pathologizing poverty. So this has to be done carefully. You know how when we started, we were talking a little bit about kind of what I've learned, and there's there is great compassion for kids that we can and should leverage, but we have to remember the context it exists in.
Yeah. Wow. That's powerful, man. Thank you for sharing that. I mean, these are the types of conversations that, are ubiquitous across systems right? Like, so I could be talking to somebody in housing, and it's the same thing, right? Like solving the symptoms of these problems and not getting to the root. And I don't know if it's a fear that getting to the root would be too big of an overhaul, right? I don't know if it's I don't know. I didn't know that, what needs to happen to kind of open folks up to understand what you're saying, because what you're saying actually isn't just a mental health, related concept.
Well, let's go back to hopefulness for a second.
Yeah.
The good news is, even if you wanted to drop the medical model on all the kids, you can't, because those therapists don't exist.
Right.
So what we're all doing is, and the way I try to describe it is, the essential strategy for doing this work is the shifting of agency and power.
There we go. Yep.
By agency, I mean who does the work, and by power, I mean who gets paid to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So what we're trying to do, frankly, is democratize the delivery of mental health services. Like what we say internally is, we need the healthcare system's money, but we don't want the medical model.
Yeah.
So what is essential is this idea that mental health isn't something you get when you meet diagnostic criteria. It's something you get where you live, work, and play, from people who look like you, who share your lived experience.
Yep.
And we have examples of this all over the place. Whatever you may think of the 12-step model and its kind of history in Christianity and white maleness and all that stuff, tonight millions of people will get together, bound together only by their experience of suffering. They will help each other.
Yeah.
There are huge opportunities to develop social model supports. And what we're seeing is the healthcare system acknowledge this by creating new types of providers who can bill Medicaid, doulas, CHW, community health workers, peers, wellness coaches, and then also reimagining where this work happens, meaning in schools or for caregivers when they bring their babies to the doctor. And I think there's great hope in this idea that we have to do a lot more to support the social and emotional health of children, but we can't do it in traditional healthcare settings, and we can't do it with traditional healthcare providers.
Yep. I want to give you the opportunity to shout some folks out. When I'm thinking about a situation like this, it is a both and. We need to think proactively. How early upstream can we start to prepare students to be with the skills they need to own their own wellness, right? And so I want you to highlight someone who's doing that well. And then on the reactive side, once there's a crisis, because there will be regardless, that's human nature and life. So when that happens, who's somebody who is reimagining, delivering these interventions in a way that you feel is worth acknowledging?
Love it. Thanks, Remi. What was the first one?
The first kind of proactive, like somebody who's doing some something on the on upstream.
Yeah. So what I would say is that young people are healing all over the place. And one of the great opportunities we have is to go find those places and highlight how they're healing themselves and each other.
Yeah.
Like one of my favorite examples of this is Destiny Arts in Oakland. They basically are this amazing arts and culture org. They do teach dance and movement arts, and they're just amazing. And they have integrated behavioral health services with this amazing clinical lead, Susan Andrian, and they are it's dope, man. Call them hidden healers. You talk to most young people today, and they'll tell you they're an artist of some kind. They're expressing themselves, whether it's beats or words or music or t-shirts or and there is such power and healing in I have this dream of, what if we just asked 10,000 kids, give them each $1,000 and say, how do you heal?
Yeah. I love it. Yes. I love that.
And what you would find is what's going on in Destiny Arts. So I think there's a whole opportunity for us to link kind of social and emotional support with the culture of resistance, right? That's part of it, with arts and expression. And I think that's happening through organizations like Cultural Therapy, through organizations like Destiny Arts, and far more.
And y'all can check out those in the show notes. We're going to put those down there to go check out those organizations and support them and just be inspired by folks who are doing that work that's preventing some of the things, that's why preventative work is tough.
Yeah.
Because you don't get those great stories of like, oh, look, this kid was, and now it's upstream, and I want to highlight those orgs. And so who's doing some of the intervention work in innovative and new, inspiring ways?
I'm going to put a little twist on your question.
Okay.
So, we are all very interested now in getting police out of mental health crisis response. Right? Many of us have been working on this for 20 years, but obviously George Floyd reinforced for us all how messed up it is to send kind of traumatized, largely white people out with guns to deal with people of color in crisis. So we've all been looking at this. And what's happening is that work is shifting over into what I'll call compassionate response. And so that's everything from therapists going out, but increasingly it's emergency medical technicians, EMS. We're trying to send EMS, not police. And I'm going to highlight a project that is in expanding to 11 counties in California, but also in Newark, New Jersey, New Orleans, and hopefully soon Atlanta. It's called EMS Core, CORPS. And what it does is train young people who face barriers to employment, so often from the juvenile justice and foster care system, but kids aren't the systems that serve them. So while they almost all have that experience, that's not who they are.
There we go.
18 to 26-year-olds who face barriers to employment, trained to be EMTs, and work in compassionate response and 911 system saving lives. This program is called EMS Core. Again, it's operational in New Mexico, 2 sites in the Bay Area, and is about to expand to 11 sites in the state of California, and then 3 sites outside the state of California. And basically the premise here is young people will save themselves and the rest of us if we give them a chance. But we have to reimagine young people aren't the problem, they're the solution.
Say it again for the people in the back.
Yeah, young people aren't the problem, they're the solution.
There we go.
And when we build healthcare systems for people, by people, we address the true drivers of poor health outcomes, which is a good job and a sense of meaning and purpose. And we redirect the economic benefit of these safety net systems to the people they were intended to serve. And when you look, unfortunately, at America's healthcare industry, you will see that it is largely a place where people shamelessly profiteer on human illness and suffering. And we need to interrupt that by seeing the people we serve as essential actors in any solution at scale, and architecting direct and specific opportunities for them to make family-sustaining employment, saving themselves and the rest of us.
Love it. Okay, Briscoe, we're gonna head into a session that we'll do with all of our guests. A list of 4 questions, all youth development focused, a kind of rapid fire. Don't feel the need to be quick with your answers. We're just popping through these 4. Okay. So the first question here is, if you can choose one critical life skill that every teen should master to be successful adults, what would it be?
Hope or resistance? Maybe hope and resistance.
Hope and resistance. Love it. Apart from the Ambition app, shameless plug, but can you recommend a tool or an app that you think every teenager should be aware of and using right now?
Man, Google Maps.
Okay, say more. Why is that? Why'd that come?
Well, remember, I have literally spent hundreds of millions of dollars on technology products that are no longer in use. So I'm pretty jaded.
Yep.
And remember, that's why it's been such a pleasure to meet you. I know that hundreds of millions of kids are spending 6+ hours a day in these digitally enhanced environment. And we have an obligation to make them pro-social. And that's why your work is so essential, friend. People like you, we need you guys to win the digital space fight. But I'm really unfamiliar. Like, if you've done the work that I've done, you don't have social media.
That's
It's
right.
not social media's fault, okay? Like
Yeah.
they're just
Yeah. Yeah.
social media is just saying the same messages that our culture have been saying. But when you
Yep.
put that message in a kid's eyeball 24/7, unintermediated,
Yep.
and it's about, famous merit, wealth is value, women
Yep.
suck, black people aren't
Yep.
cool,
Yep.
you get despair. And so
Yeah.
I'm not sure. The answer to that question is I don't know, except
There we
for
go.
your work, Remi. Ambition Angels, yes, yeah.
All right. All right. Beautiful. Okay. You're talking to adults who are committed to fostering the wellness of a teen they care about or a group of teens that they care about. What's a piece of advice that you would give to them?
Man, non-instrumental relationship. Like with me, and I wish I thought about this to get the words right, but man, I know it in my heart and my bones. Like, you need to be in relationship with someone where you don't want something from them that they're not willingly giving you. And adults see every interaction with a young person as instrumental, like either to get them to do this or get this out of them. And man, if you have the grace to ask a young person what's up and wait and actually listen, none of us know how we think or feel until we try to express it. There's all kind of synapses firing up here, right?
Right.
And giving young people the chance to try on the different hats of narrative, they don't get that. They get kind of invited into these little prisons of adult frames. So I would invite every adult I know, and I say this to a lot of like the technologists and others, like be in relationship with young people who aren't your kids. And not because you want something from them, but because you want to know them and let them know you.
Yeah. Powerful. All right, last one. You have 30 seconds, undivided attention of every black and brown teen in America right now. What would you tell them? What's your message?
Can I tell you my instinct?
Yeah, please.
Is just one of gratitude and admiration. Like, I've worked with a lot of brown and black young people, and I'm just still now overwhelmed with just admiration for the struggle. But my message is, resist and fight. This world isn't for you, but make it so. Yeah, mostly gratitude too for all of the young people who've given me their compassion and intelligence and wisdom and taught me. I worked at McClymonds High School for 7 years, largely African-American high school. And I am so grateful for those experiences, man. Like, and not a lot of fights and spit on and kicked at and a lot,
Yeah.
I remember a young woman saying once to me, "Get your help up off me."
Ooh.
Should be a t-shirt, man.
Yeah. That should be it.
And
it should be. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't have any. My message is you're beautiful. You're amazing. And thank you so much for all you've taught me.
Love it. Alex Briscoe, thank you, sir.
Thanks, Remi.